Alright, we gotta talk about Duchess Celestia and how, she is with this opinion of lollies and stuff. So I'm going to assume that you heard about what is going on with this type of situation, and we're just gonna straight up cover it and talk about it just a little bit, just to see what, just to kind of point out some things. Honestly, first things first, and obviously don't send no hate to her. I understand why she's like this. While yes, she is obviously wrong, don't absolutely send no hate to this lady because she don't deserve it, even though her opinion is wrong. But definitely, she's another person that's kind of like Noralities. That's pretty much just like, oh, lolly is, not good because it affects reality in some shape and form, or like gonna mess with the mind, and it messes with the minds of people, and anybody consumes it is pretty much a predator and whatever. First of all, she's out here talking about that people that consumes the material is gonna be some type of predator or already is one, which that's obviously not the case. If that was the case, Japan and a lot of its residents will be arrested a long time ago. And while she says she is not being biased when it comes to this, and while she also is like, talking about some doing her research and all the science stuff, and when it comes down to it, really, as much as the science research that you pulled up with it, as much as you try to, have your opinion and try to say all the stuff you want to say, have you ever even went to the lolly community in anime and really just talked to the people that's within it and kind of see why they are like the way they are? Because you and the person that you brought it, that is a scientist as well, which listening to the audio doesn't really seem like a scientist. If you just asked around, you wouldn't know why people like this type of material, and there's bunches of reasons for it. Some people like it because lolicon characters are cute. Sometimes people like them because, they want to cope with them because they probably went through a bad experience. Or some don't like them just because. There is a plethora of reasons why people like lolicon material, and it's perfectly fine. Obviously, the thing that isn't fine, and the thing we both can agree on, is that the real life equivalent to it is absolutely garbage. Do not like that type of stuff. Do not. If you do know someone that is liking that type of material, block and report them immediately. When it comes down to it, a lot of the time, people that consumes lolicon content when it comes to Gentai material or rather just anime material entirely, they're not always predators. They're not. Because again, Japan will be looking pretty full of jails right about now. But essentially, you really didn't even bring up Japan once in this entire thing. Because yes, you brought up the novel Lolita, which is also about a story about with an adult and a young girl relationship kind of thing. Essentially, you excuse that book, but not excuse the actual anime content equivalent to it. But what you really think about the novel, it's the same exact thing, just in written form. And it's really weird how you excuse one thing, but not excuse the other. If someone were to make an anime based on that book, how would you feel then? Would that be honestly something offensive to you? Would that be something that makes you uncomfortable? But the novel is fine? That doesn't make a lot of sense. When it comes to the science research and the articles and the person that you brought in, that's only like 2 pieces of research content that is, that scientists may have looked into, when there's obviously counter research materials that you can find easily as well that talks about the subject too. So even if you did bring in a type of topic or an article and people and a person that did talk about it and don't understand why people like lolicon art, or even go as far as to not agree with it, there is also counter arguments with it as well. Why it helps people, and why it's a coping mechanism, and why it's, something that people don't necessarily mind because it's not real. Hundreds of scientists, thousands of scientists that exist out there that we could just give this topic to, and I guarantee you all of them will come up to very, very different opinions if we're being honest, because art can be subjective like that. And I noticed that you kept talking about your morals a lot when it comes to this video too. A lot of the times when you see people covering this type of topic, they always do the 2 things that doesn't really matter, or 3 things sometimes. But one thing they do is they be satirical about the topic, which we don't really need anymore. Number 2, they always have a bias about it and talk about they don't like it because they already don't feel like they like it, and just continue on with it in said video, which pretty much cancels out anything that you say in the video because you're not looking at it in an unbiased way. And number 3, you might look at this from a moral standpoint. You might be unbiased about it, but you still look at it in a moral standpoint And that's also another way to pretty much make your opinion invalid automatically, because we already know if you don't like something, there's a good chance you're not going to talk really positively about the topic at hand, no matter what it is. It still jacks up the entire opinion of the video because, you already feel some type of way about it, so there's no real reason to keep listening, honestly. And lastly, when it comes down to things, is that you didn't even, one, talk to a lot of people in the anime lolly community, which is annoying. Two, you didn't even talk about the variations of lolly, which is honestly like the 3D computerized version, and also you have the T-Con version, which we did discuss, which honestly they are way worse than lolly could ever be. And that's why you don't really see it in anime at all with T-Con in the 3D model material version of it. You didn't even once mention the history of Lolicon, which, by the way, recently just did, and I've learned a bunch when it comes to it, and if it wasn't for lollies in anime, you wouldn't even have a lot of the stuff that you have now. To be perfectly honest, lollies and shotas are the backbone of anime, whether you believe it or not. The reason why lollies was even made was not because of the whole erotic part of it, it was mainly because Azuma wanted to mix art styles together of shoujo and bishojo into a more adult thing, because shoujo and bishojo is more for women and young women, and essentially they wanted to switch it up to more adult things, and essentially that's what we have today with a lot of other anime material. And as far as ages go, well, people back then, they didn't care about ages. They were just having fun creating the characters, creating the stories, and creating the situations that they will be put in, instead of worrying about ages like how everybody does now. Just have fun with making the content that you want to make. Essentially, that's what that comes down to. Now, to end all this, because this is the part that I really wanted to focus in on out of anything, outside of her opinion, outside of anything else, this is the big part of it. When I was watching her video, she mentioned that she went through something horrible at the age of, I believe, 13 or 14, where she was put in a sexual situation herself that traumatized her. And to be perfectly honest, I'm sorry that you went through that. You shouldn't have to have gone through that, and it absolutely sucks. But definitely, when it comes down to it, you don't need to force what you've been through on everybody else, because that's not how that works, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Yes, did you go through something that's horrible? Yeah. Did you go through something that you didn't need to go through? Yeah. Do you need to push it down on everybody else? No, because that's just not how that works. As sad as this is, the world don't really revolve around you. Just because you went through something does not necessarily mean the world is going to change the one thing and then, help you out. That's not how that works. If that was the case, a lot of things would be fixed in my life if that was the case. But that's just not how it works, and you just have to deal with it and try to move on the best way you can. For a lot of people, lolicon material, lolly gentai, and all this type of stuff when it comes to lollies and anime in general helps them cope, whether they are VTubers about it, whether they are making the content by drawing it, whatever, they cope with it in their sort of way, and hopefully that helps them. And essentially, yeah, that's kind of the point. You really shouldn't try to take this down, because you'll just be taking something away from people. Not to mention, if you really talk about some predator ass type of thing, you don't necessarily need anime to do this for you. You could just do it yourself without the influence of anime. That is a thing that people seem to have forgotten. Yeah, while you can't say you have some type of influence over it, it really does go down to having a strong mindset to not let that happen in real life and not let that affect you. Because at the end of the day, it does come down to your mindset and you, which it should come down to you instead of the creation of the material entirely. You should try to fix yourself and put yourself in a position where you're not, really going to do anything horrible in the real world. Obviously, you're acting like Kodako from Danganronpa. Essentially, she went through a similar situation with her being used like that. Then she got revenge on her parents by eating them, and then pretty much put everybody in the same boat as her. But you gotta realize, just because you went through something horrible, just because a lot of people probably has went through something horrible like this, doesn't necessarily mean you need to force everybody to go through the same damn thing that you went through. It's not how it works. And at the end of the day, what does that solve? It doesn't necessarily give you closure at any kind. It doesn't necessarily help you in some shape and form. It just makes people angry. So when it comes down to all of it, I do understand where you're coming from, and I do understand your hurt and pain, and hopefully one day you do get the closure that you need. But when it comes down to it, banning lolicon and lollies is just not the move. It will never be the move. As I said before, as long as anime exists, lollies will absolutely exist. There's no way you can ignore that part of history, especially with how important it is. But yeah, that's essentially what I wanted to come up with today. Again, do not attack Celestia. Do not do it at no whatsoever, obviously. And I really show sympathy towards her, show empathy towards her, absolutely. And just be nice and kind to her. So hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow me on Twitter to talk and let you know there's a channel, Patreon, and Ko-Fi is available as well. Until then, it's your boy Joey, signing off. Have a blessed day.